They have their own standards. They come up with, when they come to invest, to buy, they have their legal standards with them. So this technology also ensures the compliance required from the buyer side. So this is the second benefit of this technology. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shahid. I'm going to bombard you with a few questions. Okay. I'm sure that the audience is also very interested to know that when we do reverse osmosis, we say that there is a link, we make a link with energy consumption. Okay. So what is the actual cost in terms of the energy used and what it costs? And how expensive would that water be if we were to use it for consumption in various ways? वो mic use कर लें.
I use that mic. But if my presentation is still there, can you run it?
Could you put up his presentation again, please?
See, we actually the last slide, it contains our answer to your question. How much we are saving on this technology. Yes.
Okay, this one?
Okay, so now here's the answer. See, the supply, the fresh water supplied by KWSB nearly, $0.34 per meter cube. The water we get from the tankers, there's a commercial water, it's higher in price, it's almost $1.7 per cubic meter. And the water we are getting from the recycling process, and it includes the MVR price and it includes the RO price. The overall price, and it includes all the operation cost. The cost of the labor, cost of sludge disposal, cost of everything, it's almost $0.2 per meter cube. So see the huge savings in there.
Okay, and do people accept this water for drinking?
See, this is not meant for drinking. Of course, it can be converted into drinking, but we are using it as a process water. So it is going back into the process, just like, as a raw water, what we get from KWSB or from the tankers.
Okay, okay. I have a question from you, John. Now, is the Nexus just a theoretical construct? And does it answer questions along the lines of when we want to value water, we want water to be valued, does harnessing energy and food systems really helps us to do that? Or is it that once we are able to say that water has a price or that it is valued culturally, then does that help us to reduce costs in the use of energy and food security?
So many questions in your single question. I mean, to me, the Nexus is a concept, but it's also very practical. As I said, to me, it's a way of ensuring that you do have different people at the same level in the room. And it's a way of ensuring that the different values of water are all brought to the fore. If people are only in, some of the places I work, the water ministry is only interested in augmenting supply. It's sort of, and that drives the budget process and the government process. There isn't a whole of system accountability. There's not a whole of system accounting or across government accounting to look at the costs and the benefits of doing things different ways. So to me, if the Nexus conversation is a way of getting people in the room together, has benefit.
Okay. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Basically, give you an idea, if you build a barrage across the river and you divert water for irrigation, now we're talking of intelligent use of this water. So at one end, at the user end, you've got to be efficient in water utilization. You can't waste. And with the barrage and the water flowing, you're also harnessing energy. Now, with regards to what happens is that more renewable energy like wind and solar coming in, they're intermittent. You've got to use this hydro asset for regulation. So then the commitment is intelligent use. In other words, you're not just sending a steady flow to the irrigation need. He may have storage ponds. You will regulate the water so that per day you'll deliver the quantum required, but you use the water to regulate. So sometimes the water through the turbines is high and sometimes it's low and so on. So that's basically all of them integrated together working.
Okay, the president this morning talked about metrics and he said, I want the figures. Now, if we want to be able to say that the Nexus is not just a theoretical construct and we can actually see it working, how do we generate the metrics for that? Any one of you can answer that.
Go ahead.
We had just such a problem in the early 2000s when we were in a sort of a 10-year drought. We had a prime minister storming around asking a lot of questions, and the different states and territories and his own ministers couldn't really answer the questions that our prime minister or your president would have been asking. So to be honest, we actually we spent a lot of money on scaling up the water information services from our Bureau of Meteorology, put a lot of time and effort into that, had very good leadership, and now we just have a completely different regime. Only sort of 15 years on, we have water balances across the country that are recalculated on a daily basis. We can see, obviously how much water is in any reservoir at any point and where it's going and who owns it. With the energy grid, we sort of have a very good system now of actually seeing where all the power is coming into the grid, from which sources. So I think the transparency and the accountability has lifted. The policy decisions can be better, and we couldn't have done it unless we had ramped up our water and energy and agriculture information services, amongst others.
Okay, thank you very much. Tanya, do we have any questions on your system? Please bring them here. You'd like to say something? Yes, please use that mic. Thank you.
Regarding the statistics, I would like to add that, yes, when we work in Pakistan, we need to work on projects. The most hindrance, is the lack of statistics. We don't get real statistics from we do have departments, but we don't have reliable and authentic statistics and the statistics which are published. So so there are Federal Bureau of Statistics are there, but the statistics we need for planning, for water, food, and especially for energy, we don't get it at one a document. There is a provision in our Act, the Environment Protection Act. It requires the authorities to produce environmental reports on annual basis, but so far none of the agencies, they have produced those reports. So that opportunity is there. We can use, of course, the data for that report will come from relevant organizations, the authorities. So we need to have institutional framework, a mechanism to pump data in that report, and somebody has to prepare those reports, and somebody has to stamp that, for authenticity and credibility. So it can be shared, it can be used by not only by Pakistani researchers or developers. It need to be reviewed and used by at international level. Statistics representing Pakistan. So that provision is there in our law.
Okay, well, we have several interesting questions from the audience. So we can't answer all of them. So I'll just pick at random, and maybe the rest we can discuss over dinner. So I'll take the first one about Australia. Australian EPA and regulations are mostly modern, user-centric. How can these be guided into Pakistan's regulation? So who can answer that? I think we would need to have somebody who works on Pakistan's regulation. So maybe I can attempt to answer that, if you allow me. Okay. Yes, I think in Australia, farmers are very savvy and they have a lot of technology on their fingertips, as far as I've seen. And I know that their various institutions provide them literally minute-to-minute information, including at the micro level to say how much moisture they should be putting in the roots of certain plants. Now, in Pakistan, we don't have a system from the government that does that, but I know that some progressive farmers are doing this on their own. So how can we take this up? I think that is part of the discussion that we are having in this conference, and we have had before, that how we develop the public-private partnership to do so. Now, we heard from Shahid how their organization is doing some things that we have been discussing for a long time. So I think perhaps the way forward for us is to build those public-private partnerships so that we can learn from Australia. Okay, I'll just take another one. Is there any small scale? Which one do you want to answer? Number 4, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Fourth one is there any small scale, affordable, blah, blah, blah. Now, I think this is happening in Pakistan. There's a lot of experts who talked about water storage by enhancing the water table. So I was in the Thar Desert area, and there's a rain season, although it's short. What they've done is they built, in a valley, a small valley, they built a dam. And basically, when it rains, it catches all that water, and it just sits there. And then it seeps into the ground, and it enhances the groundwater in the area. So that allows people to do agriculture in that area. And you could even have solar-powered tube wells to extract water, and then do agricultural activity till, obviously it's seasonal, there's going to be a time duration, but at least you'll build these where there's populations, rural populations, they would even move there to do the agricultural activity and then harvest, and then they move back, which is not uncommon because if you take, for instance, I come from Sri Lanka, during the monsoon time, the fishermen go to the other side of the island and they do their fishing there, and then when the monsoon switch comes to that side of the island, they come back. So the same way, there's a lot of potential for what is called groundwater supplementation dams. There's huge potential in Pakistan to do that.
Okay, okay, thank you. We have time for 2 quick questions from here. Yes, is there a mic available in the room? Please take the mic to this gentleman. Do we not have a mic in the room? Please, could you bring it to this gentleman over here? If you could introduce yourself, and please ask a short question because we have to wind up this session. Please give it to the gentleman. Also indicate which of the panelists you would like to take your question.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm Masroor Ahmed from Institutional Specialist in Sindh Irrigation and Drainage Authority. My question is very short. When we are talking about the food and want to increase our food, water and energy, as concerned with the agriculture, as we grow more food, as we face more consequences of pest attacks and other things. So in this way, in this regard, is there any correlation of this impact of the food increase? What will be happened? How we control the pest when there is no plant quarantine laws are implemented in our country, and we are very badly using pesticides and
okay, who would like to take that question? John?
Well, I'll try, and I wouldn't presume to provide the answer for your country, but certainly in our country we've had to, in agribusiness, get a much closer connection between farmers and business. Now there's a much higher level of opportunity for young farmers, men and women, to sort of engage in public health issues. There's more information and more contest about how to have a healthier farming system. And there's a bit of regulation so that if people are using inappropriate products, there's a way of sort of detecting and penalising all of that. So it's a big challenge, I'm sure you have, but you can't solve a complex problem by only dealing with one thing, and I wouldn't presume to suggest otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Before the second question, there is a lot of noise coming from the back. May I ask people at the back not to use the phone in this room, please? You need to go right outside, not just behind the barrier, but right outside the room. And may I ask other people, if you don't mind, could you keep your phones on silent? I'd be very grateful. And colleagues, could you check? I think there are a lot of people behind the white barrier who are talking here. Could you please ask them to leave the room? Thank you so much. Okay, one more question. You have a question? Please bring the mic over here. Hello, who has the mic? Please bring it here to the first row. Thank you. Sure. Ashwar.
Thank you. I'm from the Federation Pakistan Chambers of Commerce and Industry, and we are handling, I'm more concerned about the waste of industrial water. You see, recently we have developed a standing committee on industry, academia, water collaboration, and we are working with various industries. We go to those with those industries who are facing those difficulties, because every day we have to buy water to run our factories. And me too, myself, I am also an industrialist and I have to buy water. The question is, each and every industry has a different water, wastewater coming up. No two industries have same water. How can this be handled? Because either there should be clusters of, say, textile industry or fisheries or whatever. And I was listening to water trading that was being said before this. So can we achieve efficiency by water trading and save water in industries?
Okay, thank you. Shahid, would you like to address the first part of that, and then John can take the second part?
Okay, regarding the the variation in wastewater and that. See, basically, when we go for the technology, it's always customized. Like when we design treatment, for example, MVR technology, so we go for like initial tests, we do the monitoring, we get the volumes and we get the characteristics. So technology has quite room, to accommodate all those things. So basically, our objective is to design the treatment system for the inlets, the characteristics of the inlet, and we design our system to comply with the standards. So that's important thing. The slide I showed you, with the MVR technology, we are going far below the required standards. So we are like polishing the water for the for recycling in-house. So water in that case is recycled for the reuse purposes. I will just add to that, that MVR technology, there was a question also among those 7-8 questions that how many industries we are using it. We have installed that in almost at 7 factories, and they are all diversified. Some textiles, some sugar mills also. And like the YTM case I discussed with you, and the statistics I showed were of 2 years of data we got from the plant. And basically one more thing I would like to share is the recovery. The recovery period is almost 30 months, 2.5 years. So we get our capex payback in almost 2.5 years. John, yes.
Okay, John, about the water trading.
Yeah, just a really quick one, because water trading's a big topic. So I think that, first of all, we only trade water in part of our connected systems. Okay, so it's only, sometimes I hear the talk of Australia when I'm out of Australia, and one would think that we're trading all of our water all of the time. We're not doing that. We are trading some of our water. It's a system that works in moving water to where there's water of higher value, but it then comes to one of the critiques of the Nexus, if you like, that it can be very rational. And is that, is everything in society you want to be sort of economically rational? So at the moment, in times of scarcity, the people that can go into the market and buy the water in Australia are the larger sort of agribusinesses growing almonds and things. And smaller holders who think they also have a right to water are saying, well, hang on, don't you want us to be part of the industry going forward? So, yes, there's trading. Yes, it's a good rational way of moving water. Yes, it'll keep your GDP up. But, there's other social considerations that have to be taken into account, and we're having the contest about that at home now.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, John, Mayura, and Shahid. May I ask you to step down, so then I will invite my next panel. Thank you so much, much appreciated. That was a very interesting discussion. May I now invite my second panel, Dr. Abida Farooqi, Tariq Khan, and Mahmoud Nebojsa. As you come up here, I will introduce each one to you. So Dr. Abida Farooqi has a PhD from Osaka City University, Japan, and she's currently assistant professor at Department of Environmental Sciences at Quaid-e-Azam University. So as she's working on environmental hydrogeochemistry with a focus on study of environmental factors on pollutants and hydrological cycle. And I'm very happy to tell you that she and her students are working on formulation of remedial techniques for removal of arsenic and fluoride in groundwater, and also the assessing health effects on human beings. Tariq Khan, old friend, is an architect, and his firm is based in Karachi, but the firm has worked on a spectrum of project types, from residences, as he says, to coffee shops, office buildings, apartment towers, hospitals, schools, and libraries, and boats. I'm very interested in the boats part. He's the author of 2 books, one on Baltistan, the apricot bloom, and another called Samandar Par, and he's currently working on a 3-volume book on the mangroves of Karachi. As a photographer and painter, in addition to being an architect and an activist, he writes both poetry and prose, and has been a faculty member at the Harvard School of Public Health, Boston. So your deep interest in science, art, architecture, we'd like to see it all happening in your video, which we will see in a few minutes. And last but not least, my colleague Mahmoud Nebojsa. He is a very well-known agriculturist and a member of the board of directors of Sindh Board of Investments and Sindh Abadgar Board. More than that, he's my colleague on the think tank of Isar Foundation, and with more than 20 years of experience in a whole range of agriculture, including policy, finance, marketing. He is a farmer himself, and as vice president of Growers Organization, he really understands what agriculture is all about. And perhaps who will know better than you of the Nexus and how it works. And so we'll be hearing from you a lot on that. So with our 3 guests, we'd like to begin with the documentary that Tariq has made very recently in the mangroves. So is it possible to turn the lights off?
Gibran, if you could dim the lights.
Can we dim the lights? If possible, otherwise we'll see.
Yeah, it's quite bright. If not, don't make people wait.
Okay, let's run it.
Just Gibran, make sure the sound is working. Thank you. This is our delta. It's drying. And these are the creeks that I've been studying for the past 10 years. The mangroves are not drying.
So Tariq, I will begin with you. Why did you make this?
It's complicated. It's an environment that's 15 minutes away from our shore in Karachi, 15 minutes. It's in the Kurungi creeks, which are on the edge of the delta, of the Indus Delta. The Indus River Delta is drying, we know that. That's an understood fact. These forests of the Kurungi creeks, Bundle Island, which is slated for development, and Kiprianwala, which is off the fisheries, the Kurungi fisheries, both slated for development, and they both have the most incredibly mature trees. And they both have an incredible collection of trees that used to be, that have been cut. Why did I do this? I do this because I know that my grandchildren will not see these forests, in all probability. I have an interest in science and in marine biology. I'm not a scientist, but I do feel, and I do have the ability to record and put together a memory. So why do I do this? I do this to leave behind a memory. And I do want to be an advocate for these forests, to be able to make a nature reserve or have a nature reserve created. And the documentaries and the movies are necessary because advocacy requires advocates. And I'm aiming to create some advocates for this.
Thank you. Thank you, Tariq. And for me, seeing this and hearing all the sounds, I could see the Nexus at work. I could see how the food that comes from this environment and the cutting of trees and how the sun is being absorbed. And I could really see the Nexus, so thank you very much. Now, Mahmoud, I have a question from you. You know, you farm, and you farm in a downstream area. This morning we were talking about upstream and downstream. And for me, when I look at the Indus Delta, I see the Nexus playing havoc. So I would really like to hear from you about your experiences.
Thank you very much. I think one of the aspects in Hisar Foundation is to initiate a discourse which generally otherwise we do not hear at other places, and we do it all the time. And the video of yours shows it here. Coming to Indus Delta, we feel that Indus Delta is one of the things which is absolutely forgotten. And why I say it's forgotten? Because even if you look at the allocations today, and when IRSA decides about the water, it's all the time talking about water in the barrages. If that is the case, then this is bound to happen. And this is not only happening at 15 minutes from here. The Indus Delta is about 230 kilometers. So now, I'm not a water expert, really. But we have to move on from water experts now. Why I say that? Because if you go to KT Bandar, which was once a thriving port, now you won't find people there living. The tanker supplies water there as they're supplying in defense, without exaggeration. So I'll just bring 2-3 things and close it down here. The purpose is to introduce the subject, understand the subject, and as the Honorable President said, and to take it forward. Another aspect is what Honorable President said is about the facts and figures of water that we talk about. And we always say they're not adding up. If it is 35 MAF water going to Indus, then can a scientist please correct me and tell me why is it that it is happening to Indus Delta if 35 MAF is going there? if we're just storing 12% of water out of 135, and everything else is going to the sea, and we need to store more, then why is this happening to Delta? So there are two things to Delta. One is water, the other is the sedimentation also. So if you would plot a graph between 1955 and 2003 and 2004, the number of zero flow days has declined. And we can talk a lot about statistics, but that's a fact. So this conference needs to bring about what do we have to do about this. Number one aspect is this. It's very complex and goes much beyond storages. The another aspect is sedimentation, which we don't talk about. So the Honorable Federal Government and the provincial government has come up with a Sindh barrage. So they're trying to call it Sindh barrage and for Indus. As a layman, I am unable to understand whether that will kill Delta or will give life to Delta. I am unable to understand that as a layman. If you would look at figures, and I'm sorry, I don't remember them, so I just brought it down. In early 20th century, per annum aggradation, mean the sedimentation, was 8 millimeters per year. Now, this is a research which is done. In the 21st century, it has gone down to 1.1 mm per year. Now, we were not even putting the number, what is the loss at Delta? While we say the World Banks and IMFs of this world, we do not generally like in a discussion, but they had actually come up last year, and they gave a number and they said, it's a $1 billion annual loss to the economy. We feel it's more, but this is what the World Bank is saying. Forget the humanitarian, the species, and the biodiversity that people die for today. We have absolutely forgotten that. So just ending my talk here, this is something which we need to think about. Number two, as an agriculturist myself, we consume a lot of water. My colleagues in agriculture don't like me for that, but that remains the reality and the fact. But what I saw also today, may those be examples from Australia or from, was it Tajikistan in the morning? That there was a huge government policy decisions that encouraged farmers to get into drip and sprinklers. I can give you examples. Figures were already quoted, and I do not need to say it again. If somebody would want it, I can say it again. That in the productivity wise, we are not generating, as the Honorable President said, $1 billion at MAF. We are not. We wish we could. It's simple maths. Agriculture GDP is $60 billion. And if we are 120 MAF or 100 MAF water we're doing, and you divide it, it's $500 million that we're generating out of agriculture. So that's where we need to save our water, and for future purposes, to not only take care of deltas, but the mangroves, and it is actually our lives for which we'll serve if we are to move on in a water discourse.
Thank you so much. Yes, we agree with you fully that water is everyone's business. That is why on the Hisar Foundation think tank, I think only 3 out of 9 people are water specialists and 6 are not. And we believe everyone has an equal voice. And yes, the Delta, I've been writing on the Delta for 25 years now. And you're absolutely right. If there's no policy, there will be no change. Because we will do the videos, we will put whatever figures we know out. We know that we are only making 500 million per million acre. We believe we can go to 2 million. But we don't have the policy in place to do that. All this potential is there. So thank you. We will discuss further. I now come to you, Abida. During our deliberations in the last few months, when you and I have talked, you have talked about how you can see the nexus at work at local level.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear more of your viewpoint.
At the end of the last session, there were 2 questions. How easy it is to implement sustainable methods in reality?
Zara mic kareeb kar le.
And the second one was small-scale, affordable technologies to save water. So I would like to extend these questions because I am here with the example of to answer to these 2 questions. So if you can play my presentation, because I just want to play over there.
Sure.
And then, yeah. So actually what we did Pakistan is agricultural country, everyone knows. Most of the water we use on the agriculture sector. We have the flooded irrigation system for the rice production. A lot of water is used for the rice. Second thing that I want to tell here, because I can't resist myself to introduce arsenic. So arsenic is another problem in Pakistan, and that is mostly in the Indus Basin. And most of our agricultural lands are in the Indus Basin. So if you can please, I just want to show your, next please. I don't want to give all these because we have talked too much about all these things. So this is the reality that Pakistan is facing the water problems. And all this is the evaporation loss, system leakages, and this is actually going to, for the water shortage, these are the problems. And most of the water is used on the agriculture lands. So this is the arsenic that I want to introduce. If you see on the right side, this is a red map, and on the left side, this is a map on the, this is the Punjab. If you see on the right side, this is some of my colleague has reported this map, and if you see, this is all red means like this, all water is contaminated with arsenic, and they have reported that this 60 million people are suffering from arsenic contaminated water. But it's my moral responsibility, my ethical responsibility, my national responsibility, because that report is actually creating, I would say that is actually creating a terrorism against our economy, because we are using this water for our agricultural purposes. So if every water is contaminated, then your crops will be contaminated with the arsenic. So this is actually a threat. This left side of the map is a threat for the Pakistani economy. So this map on the left side is generated by myself, by my lab, by my students, by a funded project by USAID. So if you see, we have here 79% of the water is uncontaminated, it's safe, while only 10% of the water is more than the WHO limits. If the green color, it shows that this water is within the Pakistani limits. So although we have arsenic contamination in the groundwater, but not to that extent which has been presented, and the people, unfortunately, many people, they are referring this map, which is, I totally deny that, because you can see the real picture of arsenic contamination.
How was that map generated, the other map?
Actually, there is one French group, and they use some modeling technique. That modeling technique, what they did, they only collected 1,000 water samples, and they manipulated. So I have collected only 2 samples from Lahore, and I have manipulated it over the Lahore. So if these 2 water samples contain high arsenic, all over the Lahore it's high. So actually this is not the case. Because these contaminants, they vary from place to place. So we cannot manipulate.
So are you saying that we need a lot more of science and scientific methods to really unpack the kind of generalized information that is circulating relating to the water sector?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead with your presentation.
Because arsenic is present in the groundwater, so it is present in the rice grain. In Bangladesh, we have the problem, we have in India problem, we have in Pakistan. But in Pakistan, the problem is not that much severe. So this is the water, food, and energy nexus. We have the resources, we have capital, policy, and technology. So what I'm going to introduce, we are actually using our resources and the technology to combat this problem. So if we use our resources in a sustainable manner, I think by using the technologies, we can solve our water security problems, or food security problems, and our energy security problems. So this is not a rocket science people are using over there, and this is the answer to the first question also, what is the best affordable technology that we can adopt. So this sprinkle irrigation system is the technology which can reduce the water quantity for the rice production, as well as the second objective was to reduce because rice is one of the crop that can translocate arsenic from the roots up to the grain. So we need such a technology that can reduce the water and that can reduce the arsenic contamination too. So sprinkle irrigation system is the best one. It can reduce the water, and plus, because I don't want to go in much of the chemistry, because if we are applying the flooded irrigation system, there is too much water. There is less oxygen, so the reducing conditions are there. So under the reducing conditions, all the metals, they will go inside of your plant. So if we apply the sprinkle irrigation system, the conditions will be changed from the reducing towards the oxidizing.
But tell me, sprinkler requires energy.
Yes, sprinkler.
And energy is very expensive in Pakistan.
Yes, I can show you. But if we compare it with the traditional systems of the tube well, and they use the diesel, the sprinkle irrigation uses less amount of energy.
Okay, how much less? Like half, quarter?
So I have the figures. So this is just, I want to show what we did at the field. And this is the water saving. If you see, we borrowed a small land from a farmer with the high arsenic in his irrigation water. And you can see the saving of the water when we use this sprinkle irrigation system on the right side and the flooded irrigation system on the left side. So in the sprinkle irrigation system, we can reduce the water saving up to the 50%.
Okay.
Next is because farmer is always concerned about the yield. He is not concerned about the water savings. So the second thing is the rice yield. So if you see in the non-flooded and flooded system, although this is 0.5, the difference is only 0.5, it's very ideal, but this can be achieved. So there was no difference on the yield too, and we have solved both the problems of the water quality and the water quantity. So this is the second objective was to reduce the arsenic concentrations. So when we apply the sprinkle irrigation system, oxidizing conditions prevail. So all the arsenic, it will remain adsorbed to the roots. It will not move upward into the rice. This is all just the summary. So if you talk about the energy savings, as such we did not calculate it over here, but we asked from the farmer. He was using, he has a tube well, and it has the diameter of the tube well, that was 8 to 10 inches, and he was using some diesel engine. When we asked him what about his electricity bill or his diesel bill, so he told us that his bill is about 30,000 to 35,000. So when we have this experiment was done on a very small scale, but that on a small scale, because we have used 2 to 3 horsepower of motor, a very small diameter of pipe. I think it was 1.5 inch pipe. So obviously there will be less amount of energy as compared to that diesel engine and all that stuff.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Tanya, do we have any questions on your system? 1 minute. First, we will look at the others. Tanya, let's put up the questions. Okay. Okay. Now the first question is about what immediate action can we take to improve the situation. Which situation, I'm not clear. But let's go to the second one. Do you think people focus more on the immediate impact as opposed to long-term consequences? How can we spread awareness? So, Mr. Farmer, you'd like to tell us about this?
I think it's generally speaking in a sense that in Pakistan's intellectual discourse and experts' discourse that we move on, that is not driving a proper thinking that should be driving people to understand what the issues are. And therefore, it's important to bring about a discourse which people understand. So in a sense that you ask, if you take a poll here, people will say the problem of Pakistan is either a dam or not a dam, and they forget the other things. So the kind of discourse that we are hearing today in Hisar Foundation is specifically that, is trying to understand and bring about issues. Those in Pakistan today, even Ministry of Water, which is in the federal government, is not able to frame out the issues that we have today with the agriculture and water. And it has been Hisar Foundation which last year actually brought about the policy. And we kept on debating whether it should be national or provincial. Forget national or provincial, but at least there is a policy to begin with. So with this kind of a thing, there needs to be a proper discourse in place, and then things move on from there in different directions. This is my take on this.
You're absolutely right that that discourse is absent. And, it has taken Hisar Foundation years to work with journalists, to work with government people, work with students, with intellectuals, that, as Mahmoud just said, you have to frame the issue. The issue is very complex, okay? There may be a few simple solutions, but most solutions are complex, so we have to understand that complexity. So when we use the concept of water, energy, food nexus, we are trying to understand that complexity. So thank you very much for that. Please do.
I'm sorry, I'm just interjecting. For example, if you ask the Minister of Irrigation in Sindh, I don't know, maybe in Punjab they understand more, he'll think that his primary work is to distribute water for agriculture purposes. Ask him. And this is what they're doing. I mean, whether they do it correctly or wrongly is a separate thing, but this is what they're doing from morning to evening. They're not even understanding that they're custodians of water for everything. And what are the plans for that? That is absolutely different and separate.
So this is the point, that the totality of water is not understood. And it is largely seen, as you say, as distributing surface water. They aren't even concerned with groundwater. So it was good to hear the President talk about policy today, because with the citizens' policy that we put out with all of you, and many of you contributed to, and eventually now with the Pakistan water policy, which is not doable, but we said, never mind. At least they have come up with something. And so when somebody asked about what Hisar Foundation can do, we've actually produced a whole framework for implementing the water policy. We've shared it with all levels of water ministries, provincial, federal, standing committees, whatever. But we haven't got the traction yet, because I think there is a lot of investment in the status quo. Emotional, political, money-wise. So I think it's difficult to change those positions. But here is a question which you can answer, Tariq. People are asking, what can Hisar Foundation do to target the issues of creek-killing in mangroves? Tell us what we can do. Tell us what we all can do. And why we should save these creeks.
There's a dichotomy here. The delta is dying, but the Korangi Creek mangroves are thriving. Why? They're thriving because we are throwing untreated, polluted water full of human nutrients, also chemicals that the Avicenna marina and the other mangroves are able to handle very well. Okay, surprisingly wonderful. What can we do? What we can do is to try and ensure that these remaining dense forests, and you experienced some today, remain. The President rightfully said, you've got to be pragmatic about it. You've got to look at what can be done. What can be done is that nature reserves can be created. Hisar Foundation can be instrumental in attempting to create nature reserves. Development cannot be stopped, unfortunately. I'm an architect, I understand that a little too implicitly. Should it be stopped? Shouldn't be stopped. It should be controlled, most certainly. Should be controlled. Can you control it? As an architect, I can't control it. All right? As an activist, you can't control it. We can be tree huggers, we can stand there. I would like all of you to look up a lady called Katie Lee in the Glen Canyon. So I won't show any images here. I'd like you all to do that. And look at her history. She died early this year at 94. Activist. What can we do to save these forests? What we can do is to talk about it, to raise the awareness that these mangroves, these forests are an asset, and obviously they're an asset. They absorb carbon, the carbon footprint goes down, they prevent surges, sea surges coming in, they just did last month. All right. Golf course got flooded, but Ibrahim Hedri did not. Just touched on it. So we know the benefits of mangroves. We can save them by the people who can create legislation or activism in the governmental sectors. We need the young people to talk about it and to demand that they want to keep these. We want to make sure that these forests are cordoned off so that when those two islands, Kapriawala is supposed to get a gas terminal slated soon, which means there's very little land, open land on Kapriawala, a lot of forest, which means a lot of the forest will be cut down. But the bulk of the cut trees were on Kapriawala. Okay? There's still a very large number of very, very mature trees. I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm intimately aware of the channels. Bundle Island has the largest and the densest and the most beautiful of forests. Okay? There is a new offshore city slated on it, which will happen. 3 groups have already tried in the past, have not succeeded. This particular group probably will. However, if a natural water treatment plant, a wetland water treatment plant is created, doesn't take very much effort. We have the skills and the knowledge base in Pakistan to develop it. I've worked with a group who's worked on this, also with a similar name to your group called the Pani Group. A wetland water treatment plant needs to be created. If the development does occur on Baldwin Island, so be it, as long as the mangroves are kept and the treatment plants are done. The development itself will actually provide the sweet, brackish water required by this ecosystem. The reason our mangroves in our Kurangi Creek survive and are thriving is because we are throwing in all this water in there. And here's the anomaly. I showed the first slide of the glowing, glistening water, and I actually wanted to tell Simi to ask me that question, and I forgot, is why was that water so beautiful? It is. Every sunset, it is the most incredible water. The light refracts off it, and it bounces. Why is that? It's because of all the oil we throw in. And it's all the rising methane that creates these little bubbles out there. Nature's not weak. Nature's very, very strong. But we push it to its limit, and it will do what it has to do, which is species change. And unfortunately, I think the species that will change will be us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have only 40 minutes left for the lunch break. If you don't mind, and if you don't mind, we have time for 3 questions. Okay, I've got my 3 hands here. Okay, first the lady in the second row. Question, please,
yeah.
Short.
Okay. I'm Dr. Nilofer from Quetta, working as assistant professor there. My question is from Dr. Abda. First of all, I would like to endorse your point, the presence of arsenic in water. Yes, the presence of arsenic in water in Pakistan is very less. And I also endorse this. My just question is that, have you published your data? And is it available online?
If you can see, this is published in Science of the Total Environment. The map is taken from the published data. Yes.
Okay, please, over here. Gentlemen, you've already asked a question, so we'll give the others a chance first. Give it to this gentleman. No, the next, yes. Go ahead. Then you had your hand up, Granaz? Okay, I'll come to you after that. Question, please, and short.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Kamran Javed. I am Secretary, Pakistan Food Product Processor and Manufacturer Association. The one thing which I need to bring in your notice that the different government authorities comprised of the PSQCA and PCSIR, they applied different quality standards to the finished goods, especially the food items. But there is, if in my knowledge, there is no such authority exist who apply the standards on the water supply to the industries. You can say that if the 1 to 10% water is contaminated, which is supplied to the water to the any industry, and the finished good will be produced with such contamination, and the raid and the factory will be sealed because by the PCSIR and PSQCA.
Okay.
But there is no standard, there is no check and balance on the water supply we supply to the industry.
Okay, I'll take that question, if that's okay. Yes, you are absolutely right. We do not have those standards. And, like in the manufacture of carpets, you have to have something called a rug mark that tells you that there has been no child labor in it. In the same way, if you have something like a water mark, that will tell us that water has been used responsibly. Maybe that is something you're talking about. But you're right, I don't think we have an organization for standards. Okay, bring the mic to Granas, please. This is the last question of this session. Okay, go ahead.
It's me, Granaz Baloch. I'm from Turbat. I have a just question with the agriculturist that what do you think? Building a dam is better than or not?
Very frankly, I'll give my opinion and the way we think it. We have said that there is a certain depletion in Tarbela Dam, where about already there is a 35 to 40% reduction from 10 plus MAF to 6 MAF. We think that we have to sustain certain agricultural production, so we need as replacement dams. But any other dams, as the figures quoted by Ministry of Water and Power, we absolutely disagree with the figures, and we can prove it they are wrong. And therefore, the dams, to an extent, as replacement dams. Now, this is my opinion, is absolutely all right, but more than that will harm us. That's how I think it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a very lively session. And to my panel, extra thank you. This is a kind of discussion we don't get very often. So it has been a real pleasure talking to you, and I hope that we can continue over lunch. So, you want to say something else? Okay, thank you. And I really enjoyed this session. So to all the panelists and to Dr. John Dore for getting us started, thank you so much. Lunch is served outside, and I think you have about 35 or 40 minutes to wolf it down before you come back to the sessions. Thank you so much. Nobody has had this. When we wanted to put jugs of water, we were told no, we have to have plastic bottles. Which is? Yeah. आ रहे हैं हम लोग किधर दमपुख्त में हाँ उधर आ रहे हैं ठीक है हम सब उधर ही आ रहे हैं बाकी लोग सब चले गए खाने में ओके ठीक है आ रहे हैं हम लोग